Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Aiden, from Cartoon Apocalypse, and welcome back to another episode of Page Turner. It's been a while since we've done one of these, obviously, because we've had some stream issues. But that has been fixed, and now we're back to the usual scheduled Page Turner stuff. So this week we decided to go over a document that Dexa made quite some time ago now, and so we went over some of that document, and then we started brainstorming our own islands ideas, sorta. So we're just sort of like going through a general rundown of sort of what we want a particular island to look like. So for example, the King's Island, we sort of developed what does it look like, what is the idea behind it, what's the feeling there, etc. And we were sort of using Dexa's document as a base to say like, okay, so what do we like from this? What do we not like? What can we take from it, etc. So that was what we did today. We only got through 3 islands, so the next 2 streams will probably be going over the next 6, so 9 total. So that's what we're going to be doing next week and the following week. Now, since we only went over 3 things, but it took 2 hours to go over those 3 things, it's going to be really hard to make a recap video from clips for the stream, so instead I am just going to read through sort of what we talked about for each island, and so we're not even going to have clips from the stream, so if you want to go check out the stream, you should go do that, but here's the recap for this week. So the first island we have here is the King's Island. So this is the centerpiece of Ilaria and home of the king and big businesses. It's one big city with some smaller towns around the edges, and then it also is the center of night training because obviously the king's there, knights are going to be there as well. It has the most magic technology, so it's the most up-to-date, although we did discuss in the stream that it's not like there's going to be a huge discrepancy between the technology of magic. It's going to be pretty constant throughout all of the islands. It's just the King's Island has more money, so they can fund for better technology, I suppose. Now, on the outskirts of the city, there is sort of like more forests and smaller towns, but the big city is constantly being expanded, so the people on the outskirts who like the more town feel, they're not liking that, and so they may be a little bit mad about that. Now, as far as the atmosphere, like how it feels to be in the city, it's two-sided. It's warm and friendly on the surface, but it has a lot of core issues that the king does not attend to. So for example, there's a black market that the thing with the king is he just doesn't really care. He's like, it's whatever, I'll deal with it eventually, and he just never gets to it. So, yeah, so that's why there's a black market. The town's constantly being expanded and people aren't really liking that. So there's just many of these like issues that are there. It's just you have to maybe look a little harder to find them. The climate, it's dry for a majority of the time, but it has a predictable rainy season. As far as the inhabitants, people there are focused on their business and they are competitive since there would be a lot of good schools because it's the King's Island. It's the main island, so the best schools are going to be there. People are a little ruder there because they're more focused on themselves than, focusing on other people because it's so much competitive. It's so much more competitive than all the other islands. And it's like, okay, so there's so many people here. I've got to make sure I get the job that I want. And if I have to do that, I have to work harder. I have to be, focus more on myself and not helping out other people. So that's why people are a little bit ruder there. Side islands. There's an island version of the Hall of Fame, so I think that's pretty cool. The Knight's Corner, which is basically just like another little night training facility. And then the side islands are good for importing and exporting goods because the King's Island is obviously the biggest importer and exporter because it has the largest population. Distinguishing features. There's paved roads full of concrete. It's basically just a giant city. Floating bush lights, so I think that's pretty cool. And then lack of vegetation except on the edge of the city. So like I said earlier, it's like there's forest on the outside and stuff, but like on the inside, it's all city. So as far as social life goes, it's a spectrum of competitive with business to playful with festivals. So like at night, there can be like parties on the rooftops and festivals going through the streets. And even if the king doesn't like them, he's not going to do anything about it because he's like, I don't really care. So he just kind of deals with it, I guess. But he doesn't really see it, so I don't know. I guess we don't really know if he likes it or not. Attractions. There's the King's Castle. There's the Knight's Tower, which is the main tower that has knight stuff. The Magic Central, which is basically just a little magic facility or magic like research center on the King's Island. The largest stadium on Ilaria, so for like sports events and night events, that's the stadium. The King's Hall, which we don't really know what that is yet. It's just a thing that's there that apparently Luna and Nico can discover in one of the episodes to leverage against the king. So that's there. The Isle of Fame can visit to determine the type of people the king honors, useful for staying on his good side. Monopoly Square, a plaza surrounded by big businesses, and it was the site of the first public corruption scandal. So that was the King's Island. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Research Island, or also known as the Experiment Island. So this is an island where scientists do research and practice their magic, a large variety of terrain, so there's something for everyone there. So regardless of if you're a magic, or not a magic, if you're an earth, fire, water user, you are good. There's something for everyone. It has the smallest population out of every island, and nobody lives there permanently except for these two inhabitants, which is one of the king's officials and the head researcher. So there's hardly anybody living there full time. There's hardly anybody at all there at any time. And these two, they constantly clash, but are basically frenemies. So there could be some sort of like fun dynamic there between them. People that go to school there and work there live in dorms/buildings specifically for them. So the way that it would work is like they sign a contract and they're like, all right, so I'm going to be living here for 2 years to do research, for example, or go to school here. And then they leave after that period of time, or they can extend their contract. It's never like, I'm just going to live here permanently. That's not an option. So in theory, I mean, you could live there permanently, but it would just be in a dorm, and nobody really wants to live in a dorm forever, I don't think. So yeah. There are also some hotels for tourists, but I doubt there's going to be very many, because who would want to tour this island? There's a lot of security to prevent secrets from being revealed. So like, if the king hires some researchers to go do research on a specific subject and he doesn't want that getting out, the security people will keep watch. There are a lot of unique species on the island. So, I mean, yeah, they're experimenting with species, so they come up with some weird combinations of species, I guess. And just more wildlife in general, since there's not very many people and they're not like disrupting the environment per se, there's just a lot more wildlife there. There's a way to get to the bottom oceans. We're not really sure how that's going to work, but we will talk about it later. Like Area 51, but more fantasy, and people make theories on what things going on there. So it's basically the Area 51 of Eularia. The atmosphere, everyone is there for a purpose. Like, you're not just there because you're there. You're there doing research. You're there doing schooling. You're there working, I guess. So nobody's really going to bother you because you're there for a purpose. Unless if you're doing something bad. If you're like sneaking into the private research facility, they're going to call you out on it and be like, hey, what are you doing? So, yeah. Climate, they experiment with the weather too, so the weather there is all messed up. So it's just a weird place there. Inhabitants, they're hardworking and likes to question things. Rough around the edges, very straight to the point, and impatient. Side islands, there's volcanoes and other like miscellaneous islands. Side islands are for more dangerous experiments where there could possibly be like explosions or something and they don't want to harm the main island. Distinguishing features, destroyed wasteland and research buildings. So the destroyed wasteland, I imagine, is just like a big rocky field where they test stuff, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really describe this, but basically you can expect there's like a mountain on this island, there's a big forest, there's a big lake, there's all kinds of different things. So if you need to do research in a forest, you're good. If you need to do research on the top of a mountain, you're good. If you need to do research at the bottom of the lake, you're good. Like, it's got a lot of stuff. There's caves, you're good. It's not like abundant caves, but there are some caves there that you could do research on. So there's a large variety of stuff for you to do research on in this island. Social life, there is no social life. People are there experimenting and stuff. You're not really there to have fun and chit-chat with someone. And attractions, it has the largest library on Ilaria, and you need special access. This is the library where Blake gets a lot of his information and starts learning things about the notebook and stuff. So, yeah, only select people get access, and since he's a teacher on history, he has access to it. And then private and public research facilities. So, if you are working for the king, you would be private, and then if you're anyone else, you're just in the public facility. So that was the research island. So now we're going to move on to the mountainous island. also known as the Blizzard, Frost Island, Frost Mount, or Hailstorm Island. So this is a cold, frigid, and dangerous iceland known for its weather. One large mountain. It's one large mountain basically. So the center of the island is where the peak of the mountain is, and then it sort of expands out to the very edges of the mountain. In some villages, it's just one giant house for the whole village because it is so cold. This is such a cold island. So people are just like, we just got to build one house and then we'll all sort of huddle together. And the one or two fire users will sort of help keep the fire and help keep it, warm. The places with less snow would be more populated, and they would be more spread out. Like they might have different buildings and stuff like that. It would still be really cold, but it's not like it's bearable. It's not like unrealistic to live there. Well, really, it's unrealistic to live on this island in general. The reason why people haven't left is because not everybody is gonna leave, because not everybody has a place to go. So the people that are there stay there, and nobody comes in because who would want to live there, and nobody really leaves because the people leaving would feel bad for the most part, I think, for leaving that area and just leaving the people who cannot leave behind. And if some people go, there's just no way that the other people there are going to survive. So they all sort of have to stick together to survive. So yeah, and they were born that way and they were raised that way. So that's their mentality about it. And so they just don't change their mentality about that. So that's why people don't leave. The atmosphere is cold. Some people try to be optimistic, but it's really hard because it's so cold and there's a constant snow on the island. So it's like, oh boy, this is really rough. The climate, it's mostly wet and icy with a frequent freeze. Constant snow during the day. Intense wind gusts push the snow up into the sky at night. So it's basically an inverse of snow. So the snow goes up and sort of goes away, I guess. And so that's why it's not just piling up on snow and people can actually live if they want to go out. So like during the day, huge snow piles, and then during the night, all the snow gets lifted away by wind, and then the next day, constant snow. It doesn't really stop snowing, so it just settles back down, and then night it goes away. So that it's a constant loop. Not very much variety here on this island. And since at night it's a giant snowstorm, people really must take care to not get stuck out at night, because if you do, you're gonna die basically. And then the air there is just thin, there's not much oxygen, especially if you're up higher on the mountain. The inhabitants adapted to weather conditions and learned to drop their body temperature to avoid the heat-seeking hailstorms. Not exactly sure how that works. Everyone is hardworking because they have to be to survive. So again, that sort of goes back to why they don't just leave, because if they leave, then the rest of the people there don't survive. Some side islands, they are icy caverns and icy peaks, so really just smaller versions of what's already there. Distinguishing features, there could be many lakes and rivers that sometimes melt and the water will go off the island and into a waterfall, but then they will freeze again. So basically frozen waterfalls off the side of the mountain, or I guess it technically would be off the side of the mountain, but also off the side of the island, which would be really cool. There are also underground hot springs that can only melt through the snow when the snowfall is light enough to not constantly be freezing it again. Periodic hailstorms and an occasional heat-seeking hailstorm. Again, not really sure what the heat-seeking hailstorm does. Like, does the hail have a mind of its own and is like, I'm gonna find the heat? I don't know. Social life, everyone stays indoors because like it's so cold, you don't want to go outside ever. The people who have to go outside, I feel so bad for them. And the attractions there would be the hot springs and the mountains. And there's also a night training facility there. So, I wouldn't want to be a night training there. Although I would assume that most knights have to train there at some point. But it probably wouldn't be for very long. But yeah, that was the mountain island. But anyway, that was really it for all of the islands. Yeah, like I said, we will be doing this again next week, and we will probably do another 3 islands, and then the following week, another 3, and that should be the final ones, and then we'll see where to go from there. If you did enjoy this video, you can leave a like and subscribe for more content similar to this, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!